This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for individual professional legal advice. The podcast information was carefully compiled from vetted sources and references. However, Rose Resources Outreach to Safeguard the Elderly cannot guarantee that you will not fall victim to a scam. Let's talk about scams. It's the must-listen show for anyone who wants to protect themselves and their loved ones from scams. Every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio, Joyce Petrowski, founder of Rose, and her guests will provide valuable insights and practical tips on how to recognize and protect yourself from scams. And now, here is your host, Joyce Petrowski.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk About Scams. My name is Brian Watson, filling in for Joyce Petrowski for the next 2 weeks. I am a community outreach specialist for Rose. We are an Arizona nonprofit. Rose is an acronym, Resources Outreach to Safeguard the Elderly. And we are passionate about people not falling for scams. We want to prevent people from falling into scams in the first place. So today's title is a little different. Hopefully it'll catch your attention. It is, what in the world is pig butchering? And you're probably thinking, what is this guy talking about? Well, I will explain. And by the time we finish today, everyone listening and watching today will be a little bit of an expert at pig butchering. And then we want you to share this information with people that you love and care about. So first of all, we need to start with romance scams. It's a very common scam that we see here at Rose. We do a lot of presentations out in the community, and we hear these horror stories. So what is a romance scam? Well, first of all, it has nothing to do with romance. It's all about fooling people and preying on their desire to feel loved and wanted by someone else. So how do romance scams first start? Usually they're online. And someone, and a lot of times the scammers will target someone who's a widow or a widower, or someone who recently got out of a long-term relationship, and their friends will say, hey, why don't you go online and make some friends on Facebook or another social media site, or maybe even go to a Christian dating site, or play words with friends. Well, let me tell you, the scammers are out there like sharks, just patrolling these sites. And they will start a conversation very innocuously. They'll message you and say, hey, how are you doing? Good morning. Where are you? And they'll say, hey, you're really handsome, or you're really pretty. Do you have grandkids? What are your hobbies? And then it just starts this little innocent conversation online, like on Facebook Messenger. And then soon it becomes a daily thing. And then soon the scammers will move away from the social media site and go to something like WhatsApp or Telegram. And then you never get to meet them because this scammer is overseas. That's how these romance scams work. And, maybe they're in the military, or they're a missionary, or they're visiting family and friends overseas, or they volunteer. And, because of where they are is so remote, they can't make phone calls. Everything is just like texting or online messaging. And let me tell you, these people are the perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, because that's where they want to go. This online quote relationship moves really fast. And before you know it, people are online saying, oh, I'm going to check in with my boyfriend right now, or I'm going to check in with my girlfriend. And they say the nicest things. and they'll shower you with affection. They may even send you flowers or write a poem for you. And this escalates really quick. And then eventually they want money because that's what scammers do. And they will say, I want to come visit you since we're going to get married someday. And then they'll ask for money and they'll say, you know what, my credit card has been stolen, or the government here locked up my funds. Can you send me some money so I can come visit you? So you send them money for a plane ticket. And then when they're on the way to the airport, they get in a car accident and they're in the hospital and they need more money. And you can see where this is going. So that's a romance scam. And I've met people that have lost money in romance scams. But there's only so much money you could send someone for a plane ticket or a hospital bill. The scammers have taken it to the next level. And that's why today we're talking about pig butchering. Yes, that is a crazy term, and I'll explain what it is. It basically, pig butchering, think of it as a variation of the romance scam. So this variation that we're going to talk about today, pig butchering, actually started in China. And the scammers there would refer to their victims as pigs and use a Chinese word, sha zhu pan, which means killing pig's plate. So, in the same way that a farmer would fatten up a pig for slaughter, the scammers think of it the same way. They're not going to kill you physically, but they want to kill you financially. So, they'll fatten you up by having you invest money in cryptocurrency. So, if you're ever asked by anyone you don't know to invest in cryptocurrency, you are the target of a pig butchering scheme. So, the same way they would contact you in a romance scam, social media, words with friends, dating sites, they do the same thing. They build that online relationship. Um, and they prey on people of all ages and all levels of financial sophistication, but they often target people who've gone through a divorce or a death of a loved one. So the what they do is they establish trust, and that's the key. They start real slow. It's a long play scam, meaning they're not going to ask you to invest in cryptocurrency in the first week. They may wait a month or two. And what they do is they'll just innocuously introduce it. When you ask, hey, like maybe the scammer will show pictures of them traveling on the weekends, or going to Paris or going to London or going something like that, and then the victim will say, how can you afford to do all this? And the scammer will say, well, I've done a little bit of cryptocurrency investing. And when I say crypto, a lot of people think Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is 60% market share, but there's thousands of cryptocurrencies. And then they'll say, well, if you want to invest a little bit, let's start small and see if it works for you. It's done very well for me. So the scammer will ask their victim, invite them, after they've gained this trust, to invest a little bit of money in one of the cryptocurrencies. And then they'll actually set up a little platform on your screen that you can log into, and it actually will show that you're making money. But it's fake. It's all part of the scheme. And then, we all want to make money when it comes to stocks and things like that, or investments. The victim gets excited because they look on their portal and they see that they're making money. And then here's one of the keys that the scammers will do with pig butchering schemes. They will refund all your money just to show that it's liquid. And once again, it's part of the big scheme. They want everything. So then you see that it's liquid, you see that you're making money, and then they say, all right, you ready to try it again? And then they go for it all. Okay. So pig butchering is so different from the other romance scams because they're looking to take every penny you have. And I have some stories to tell. And the last time I was on this show, I talked about our anatomy of a scam that we talk about at Rose. 3 parts: contact out of the blue, whatever way, social media, texting, email, a compelling reason to act, your money's frozen, your grandchild's in jail, or you've won a prize, something like that. And then they always ask for money one way or another. And then in the middle of our anatomy of a scam infographic, we have urgency. This particular scam does not fit the pattern of our anatomy of a scam. There is no urgency. It's a long play scam because they're going in for the big take. They want to get all the money. So it's a lot of time and effort, but the payoff is worth it for the scammers. About 3 or 4 years ago, when I was still with the federal government, I was asked to talk to a lady who had lost a bunch of money in an investment scheme, and I didn't know all the background. I did a radio show in northern Arizona, and someone heard me and said, reached out to the radio station and said, "Would you talk to my friend? She just lost a bunch of money." So I called this lady up, super sweet lady, found out she had lost $700,000. She had lost her husband. He died. Um, she ended up going online at a friend's suggestion. She met this guy who said all the right things. He sounded like the perfect guy. He introduced the idea of investing in cryptocurrency so that her grandchildren would be taken care of, and she believed it. And she actually sold her house to invest more. The scammer had convinced her to drive down to a local store, and she was feeding cash into a Bitcoin ATM using a QR code that the scammer, her boyfriend, fake boyfriend, had provided her. And when he finally realized she had invested about 700,000, all of her money, he ghosted her, meaning he just left her. And let me tell you, this lady is super smart. That's not what I expected. And basically, this was a pig butchering scheme before I had even heard the term. Um, you know, um, I did a presentation last year in Southern Arizona, and a lady came up to me in tears, and she said, I fell in love with a guy named Peter online, and I thought we were going to get married, and he was living in Europe, and he was the sweetest guy, and he said all the right things, and I really trusted him, and she ended up sending money to him. Luckily, she did not send crypto, did not buy cryptocurrency at his direction. But this stuff's happening all the time. It's terrible. If you enter the term pig butchering in a search engine, you will see all kinds of results. I found one on a lady, an article on a lady in the Chicago suburbs. She lost $1 million in a pig butchering scheme. Um, the TV reporter interviewed her at her house, a house that she was going to have to sell. And, she was so embarrassed. There was so much shame. She was a widow, and then she lost all this money to this fake online boyfriend. And then she had to tell her kids that she lost the money and then that she would have to sell the house. You know what? These scammers are really, really good. They are professionals. They're working in compounds, scam centers. They're reading from scripts. They're almost like actors, and they are highly motivated, and they will contact you every single day, multiple times a day, say all these nice things. You'll fall in love with them, but please, please don't. It's absolutely horrible. So then, the one variation I do want to share is, not everyone has 700,000 or $1 million to invest. When the scammers figure that out, they will use you as what's called a money mule. So they will use you to handle their financial transactions, or they'll have you buy phones and mail them to them, or they'll have you receive items in the mail and forward them to someone else as part of another scam, or they'll have you make deposits or withdrawals, or basically be their hands and feet somewhere in another country to do bad things. And I've met money mules, and once again, those people are usually found online through the romance scams. So the scammers will get you one way or another. They'll either take money from you just to buy a plane tickets and visit and things like that. That never happens. They'll get you to invest in cryptocurrency and take all the money, or they'll use you as a money mule. It's absolutely horrible. And then one other thing I want to share today before we wrap up is, not all pig butchering schemes start as romance scams. A lot of times, the scammers will just send random text messages, and something as simple as, "Hi, you're in my address book, but I don't know who you are. How do we know each other?" And it'll just start an online back and forth texting. And you're saying, "Well, I don't know you. I live in Arizona. I live in Texas." And then they go back and forth, and a lot of times they'll send a picture, and they're always good looking, trust me. And you know, then eventually they get to the point where they'll introduce the cryptocurrency investing. I've seen ones where a scammer will send a picture of a bottle of wine and say, "Did you get the bottle of wine I sent you?" And the soon to be victim will say, "No, I didn't. You must have the wrong number." And then they'll just go back and forth. And when the victim is nice and maybe a little bored, they'll start interacting. Or the last example, they'll send a text with a cryptocurrency investment tip, or an invitation to a session, an info session on cryptocurrency. And people fall for it and say, "Oh, okay, I'm interested." And then they get hooked when they find out they can make, 2000% returns and anything like that. So it doesn't have to be a romance scam to end up in pig butchering. And then, what's unbelievable that I've learned is I'm sorry, many of the scammers that contact victims are actually not doing it on their own free will. A lot of these scam centers that I mentioned earlier are based in foreign countries, a lot of them in Southeast Asia. And these people are tricked into thinking they're going somewhere to get a lucrative job, and maybe even in the high tech sector. They show up at these buildings, these compounds, and the scammers take their identification, they take their phones, they put them in a room somewhere and force them to send these text messages or social media messages. And if they don't get the quota that the scammers want, they will beat them, they will punish them, they'll make them work longer. There's even stories of sexual assaults and beatings of people that don't comply. The United Nations actually did a study, and they estimate there's over 200,000 people that are considered enslaved workers in Southeast Asia at these call centers, and then also in other parts of the world. So it's victims contacting victims, stealing money and giving them to the scammers that are higher up. So it's a real tragic story, and it's only getting worse because it is so lucrative. And these criminal gangs, these criminal organizations know they can make so much money by doing the scam thing. And it's just an example. I read an article recently, and the article was a study on the country of Cambodia. They have a very vibrant scam industry, unfortunately. And it's estimated that their scam industry within the country generates 12 to $19 billion annually. And that is equivalent to 60% of the country's GNP. And they're not the only country that's doing this. Scamming is very, very, very lucrative. Um, so I first heard about pig butchering in 2023. I was still in federal law enforcement. I had met Joyce Petrowski, our founder, but I wasn't part of Rose yet. I had just did an interview for the Rose podcast, and then I went back to go look at it, and Joyce had posted another video interview where she interviewed a psychologist, and that person was talking about pig butchering. And I said, "What the heck is pig butchering?" So I watched it and I learned. So that was one of the many reasons I was so impressed by what Joyce and the other team members at Rose were doing. They were on the cutting edge of this stuff. So little did I know, a few months later, I would retire from federal law enforcement and start working part time for Rose. And one of the reasons was because they're disseminating good information, and I wanted to be part of the battle against fraudsters. So we really want you to go to roseadvocacy.org. That's our website. Sign up for our monthly email, and we also do every Tuesday we have an email that goes out with a little tip for the day. This is just great information. You can't just sit at home and pretend and hope these scammers aren't going to come after you, because they're coming after you. They're coming after me. They're coming after our family, our friends, our loved ones, our neighbors. So please sign up and then go to our website too. A lot of great resources. We have more information on pig butchering. And if you liked today's show, send the link to someone that you really care about. Everyone needs to know about pig butchering. All right, that's all I have for today. I'm going to be back next week for another show, filling in for Joyce. I'm very excited. She trusts me to do this. Until next time, thank you for watching. Let's talk about scams.
Well, that's all the knowledge for this episode. Tune in every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio at k4hd.com as Joyce explores a variety of knowledge so you have the power to make scam protection your healthy habit. And until then, feel free to reach out to Joyce and let's talk about scams.